Do you have a minute for Comadre time?
Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host Marcy, and today we have an amazing guest. His name is Chad, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Who are you?
Well, hey Marcy, thanks for having me on. My name's Chad Youngquist. I am a happily married man, father of two. Our oldest is our daughter, and she's 17, and our son is 15, and he is autistic. And I've spent the last several years on a few different platforms doing a couple of things in the autism space, and that's we have a YouTube channel that my son and I do where we just talk about what it's like to be an adolescent with autism, and then I have a Instagram account that just does encouragement for parents of children with parents of children with special needs. Just because I've been down the road for a long enough time now and have learned a lot of the stuff I know through the school of hard knocks, and my hope is that other parents don't learn a lot of the same stuff the hard way, that I can be of encouragement and kind of help people along in their journey as they're starting out.
I love that. So Chad and I usually tell the listeners how I met my guests. So we haven't met in person as of yet, but I started following your account because of Moments of Joy podcast. She had reposted something you had posted, like words of encouragement for parents. And I was just like, wow, he's like doing a lot of what we're doing, but like it's nice to see it from a male perspective. And we don't see a lot of the dads like speaking out and like talking about their experiences being dads of children with special needs. So I feel like your representation was needed, and I'm so glad that you're using your platform to encourage other parents and to help the community in general. I didn't even know about the YouTube channel. Like, I'm excited to go and watch some of the content that you've been creating with your son. So today's topic, Comadres, is creating inclusive and accepting spaces for special needs parents. And the reason why the topic came up is since the goal is to create community and accepting environments on this podcast, I feel like, touching on that topic today would be important, especially because the focus of this season has been mental health awareness for our parents and, supporting our parents' mental health needs. Because a lot of the time, I feel like because we're caretakers, we neglect ourselves so much. So we're going to also talk about that documentary that you shared with us on your Instagram account a few days ago.
Sure.
So but before we get into that, I want to just kind of get some of the preliminaries out of the way. So what is your career?
I'm actually a home builder by trade. I've been a home builder my entire career, and this last year we decided to leave the industry, and so we're actually sort of transitioning right now, but we do have a couple of different construction companies, a custom home building company and a light earthwork company. But we are kind of putting certain aspects of that in other people's hands and moving on to a different arena. And so just part of my journey in this whole thing as being a parent in a different circumstance has been learning to sort of challenge myself in ways that I didn't know were possible. And being a dad of an autistic son is not something that I expected to be. And as a result of being one, I've really had to dig deep in a lot of aspects of my life and challenge myself to be better at a lot of different things, relationally and my own mental and spiritual wellness and all those things. And one of the things that came up in my career is that I sort of lost passion. And I thought to myself, well, I talk a big game about putting difficult things in my path so that I can overcome them and learn and grow and teach myself stuff. If I'm going to practice what I preach while I'm not having a good time with my current career, well, then as a 47-year-old man, why don't I just go ahead and reboot my entire life? And so that's what we chose to do. We just are kind of abandoning the companies that we built from the ground up and going into a completely different sector. And so it's just part need a change of pace, part challenging myself to see if I can actually start over. So it's been kind of fun.
That is so brave. Yeah, like I feel like during the pandemic, everybody just started reevaluating everything, and it kind of just came to head. Everybody was just kind of like, deciding on what made them happy and choosing not to continue in those things that were not bringing them joy. And I'm so happy that you guys are doing that, because it's like, you don't know what you're capable of until you push yourself. And it sounds like you guys are really pushing yourselves out of your comfort zone and really going forward and finding that thing that, gives you that spark. Because the thing is, we wake up every morning and life is just, cyclical all the time, right? We do the same things every day. But what is the point of being involved in a life, especially because we're like on this spiritual journey as well? Like, what is the point of being in a life that you're dreading every day to get up to go to work? Or you're dreading every day to get up and go to your business,
Right.
We need to be doing things that bring us joy, because in turn, that, helps us become better parents in the long run. If our children see us happy, it's going to give them a goal in the future to be like, hey, my dad was really happy with his job. He was like really, passionate about what he was doing, and he wanted to go to work every day. So, it kind of, it's like a trickle down effect, so it helps our kids strive for better and to have a better quality of life in the long run.
Well, and when we choose to take the hard road and make a big life change, our kids get to see our struggle too, and they get to see how we manage difficult things, and we can model not just, hey, we're not satisfied in our current scenario. We want to be happy. We want our kids to see us happy, but also we want our kids to see us struggle a little bit. And figure out whatever it is that might be, so that they know that when tough times come about in their own lives, like they can think back on how did mom and dad conduct themselves and what did they do about this. And so I had a great set of parents who modeled a lot of things really well for me, and I really want to in turn do that for my kids as well.
That is so important. Yeah, growing up, I'm a child of immigrants. I came to this country when I was like 1 year old. So, the struggle is part of like the journey, right? And our kids, we try to save them so much. I feel like in a way it's good and bad, because like we try to save them so much from heartbreak and like, struggling, but also that is what helped form us as adults, right? And taught us to like persevere, because that's another thing. Like life is not always going to be easy, so it's important for our kids to see us, dealing with different types of difficulties and situations that are not, not everything is going to be cookie cutter and exactly how we want it to be all the time.
Yeah, I just had literally 15 minutes ago, I had this conversation with my son. He got in a whole heap of trouble yesterday with a bad attitude, and it just kept going and going and going. And finally, I had a consequence, and I said, if screens are a big deal in our house. He has a couple things that he likes to do, where he's checking sports scores and checking the weather and playing Roblox or whatever, and that's a big deal for him. And so that's his biggest consequence. Well, after a couple hours of kind of taking my blows, I finally was like, dude, I have to take screens away. I warned you a bunch of times, and so now I'm going to do it. And if you complain about it, I'm going to take screens away into tomorrow too. And he ended up getting screens taken away, not only for the rest of the day yesterday, but also today in its entirety. He came to me after school. He got home from school and he said, hey, I'm sorry, what can I do about getting my screens back. Can I do anything? And I said, not this time, bro. Life, sometimes we just have to deal with the consequences. And you knew good and well, I told you what was going to happen, and it happened. And so I have to, as your dad, I have to stick to my guns. And you have to, know what it's like to have to pay for the consequence of your actions. And so, yeah, it's funny you say that because I just had that conversation with him.
I commend you because a lot of the time, as parents of kids with special needs, we want to, shelter them so much, but they got to know that there's going to be, for every action, there's a reaction. And if you're choosing to do something that and I've spoken to you about, and it's not the right thing to do, then there's going to be consequences to the actions. My house, we have a lot of screens too. And usually to get him to listen, I'm like, okay, if you're not being a very good listener, I repeat it twice, you're not being a very good listener. If you continue not to listen, then I'm going to have to take your phone and your iPad. And he's like, oh no, mommy, I'm sorry. I'm listening now. Okay, I'm going to do whatever you have to do. But this is such is life, right? Like there's things that we need to teach our children, like really give them real world scenarios and to be able to set them up for success in the future. Because a lot of the time, and then that's cool too, because I'm a special education teacher, but a lot of the time I feel like some teachers, because they have special needs, they want to treat them differently, like behavior, like consequence-wise. And that doesn't really serve our kids. Our kids need to know that there will be consequences. Yes, they need more explanation sometimes to help them understand what's happening and why it's happening. Like, it can't just be like, you're just taking something away, you're not having a conversation. It has to be, there has to be a few more steps. But there definitely has to be consequences all the time.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer in that. In fact, we did a YouTube video one time about tough love and how I'm kind of the hard nose in our house, and I took some heat from some of the folks that watched that video, and they commented like, "Hey, you need to lighten up" or whatever. And if you watch the video, you'll see that it was pretty benign things. It wasn't crazy, but it was interesting to me because it's like, well, I have to give those people grace. They have no idea what it's like to walk in my shoes. I have no idea what it's like to walk in their shoes. And so we can't pretend to know the right call for each other's kids, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and it's funny because my wife and I think, balance it out pretty well. She's very much a soft love person, and I don't like to use the word coddling because I've gotten in trouble for using that word before. But where I might be a little bit tougher in the love department, she softens it up, and so I feel like he gets a good balance of both.
Yeah, I have to be good cop and bad cop right now.
Yeah, but, right.
The thing is, I have to enforce the law because since I am a single mother, my mom wants to just kind of like, oh, he can get whatever he wants. I'm like, no, he can't. You need to teach him that there's consequences to the actions and he needs to follow the rules. Like, the rules apply to him exactly how they apply to his cousins and everybody else in the family. So, so your son is autistic. Does he have any other comorbidities, like any other disabilities?
No, I don't know if he's never been diagnosed for like ADHD or anything else. He he's pretty severe learning disability, but he's also incredibly smart in terms of his memory. He's got a absolutely incredible memory. And school is tough for him, but if you ask him to recall all of the NFL games that happened yesterday, he will tell you every single game that happened, where they played, who they played, what the score was at the final. And so it's a really interesting process to be in, but he's super, super smart with some things, but academically, just at school, he struggles. And so he
struggles a little.
He's actually not on a path to truly graduate. because school is so hard for him, and school, just being there and at a high school, public high school, and having that many people and around him and that much noise, and it gets overload for him. And so he only does 3 classes. The school has allowed him to come and go through a side door at the school so that it's more private, and he's got a teacher that sticks pretty close to him, and all 3 of his classes are in like a little triangle in that same wing of the school. And so he doesn't have any other diagnoses aside from autism, and his autism affects him in all kinds of weird ways. And so like there are certain things where you're like, there's no way that kid's autistic, and then other things you'd be like, oh yeah, definitely. And so it's one kid on the spectrum, that just means one kid on the spectrum, right? And so he's got a lot of fine motor skills challenges, but at the same time, like he can catch and throw a football like from the trampoline like a madman. Like he one-handed catches and stuff like that. But if you ask him to cut a steak, he'll cut his fingers off. So it's kind of it's a wild dichotomy of stuff. He's an excellent snow skier, and his eye-hand coordination is pretty good. But like when his handwriting, like you can't even read it, and so it's just super strange. Just the different challenges from fine to gross motor skills and that sort of thing.
That's interesting. He has a lot of splinter skills. So that's in special education, that's what we call it. So like he's good in one thing. Like for example, he's great in memory. He has long-term memory. Like the processing from short to long-term memory is excellent for him. I'm hearing he's really good at gross motor activities. So his hand-eye coordination is good. He gets a lot of proprioceptive input, so he likes to, be physical. But then, like, the fine motor things are a little bit challenging for him, which I've seen a lot. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I love our kids so much. Like, it just like getting to know them and like really exploring their brain, and like the things that they excel at are just like phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it was just it's so eye-opening, and the way that our kids tap into certain parts of their brains is so intriguing to me.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my story the other day. He, like 10 days ago, he's like, hey, it's going to snow here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, so we live in Eastern Washington, and it snows all winter, but it doesn't usually start until maybe the 1st of December. And I'm like, bro, that's too early, man. That's too early. And then I stopped, and I'm like, you know what? He's never been wrong. I'm not going to challenge him on this. And literally, like 3 nights ago, I look out the window and it's snowing. And,
oh my God!
and somebody else commented on it. I was talking in the DMs with another person, and they think that their child can feel the barometric pressure, and that's how like sensory stuff for autistics is so wild. Like the way their brain processes things, like we don't understand it. And there's something to the way his brain processes things that's just otherworldly. Like I don't understand it. He can hear different sounds that we can't hear. And he can, like if we're in our boat and he's in the bow of the boat, he can tell me to the mile an hour how fast we're going based on the frequency of the motor.
Oh my
God.
Yeah,
there's just really wild stuff like that, and it's just fascinating. It's awe-inspiring, really.
It's oh my God, like our kids just I had a kid that in class that I've talked about this on the show before. I had a kid that would tell me, I would tell them, Billy, I'm just using a fake name. Billy, I need to get to 42nd Street from our school. How do I get there? And he would tell me to the T, like, you need to transfer at this place and this exact location. And, every single direction, word for word, without Googling it. Like, this was all in his mind. There's another child, not another child, it's an adult. They took him on a helicopter ride over New York City. and then they brought him back to a location to draw what he saw. He literally drew like every single building, every single window. It was a masterpiece. It spanned, I don't even know how many feet. I'm gonna link that, but it was just like it's just like how their brains work is insane. Also, the man that created Pokemon, he's on the spectrum. So think about the intricacies and like thinking about all those powers and all the things that those characters have, like every single thing. Like he was able to like visualize how they look, the powers that they were gonna have, and all of that, which is amazing. But
that's amazing.
It's I really love our kids. But so tell me a little bit, when did you and your wife notice that your son was different? Like when was he diagnosed, more or less?
So our situation is somewhat weird in that we had a sense right at the moment of birth, and he came when he was born. He was gray as a ghost, like head to toe, no color whatsoever. It startled me so much. I thought he wasn't alive, and
she had a natural birth, your wife?
Yeah, everything was totally natural because he came so fast. There was no time for drugs. There was no time for anything. We literally, I think he was born within 5 minutes of coming through the front door of the hospital. It was that fast. Okay. And so and the other thing that happened was that they laid him down on Jamie's chest and put a blanket over him, and he didn't make a peep. And it was strange to me. You think that an infant leaving that nice warm environment into a cold hospital room, most babies cry. And so those two things were kind of weird. And I asked the nurses, and they're like, no, we see that from time to time, both the gray and not crying. But something was funny. It was hard to put our finger on it. And the next morning, because he was a couple of weeks early, we didn't have his name figured out. And I was asking Jamie the next morning, I'm like, well, what are we going to name him? And she and I had a conversation like, hey, we both feel that something's a little bit different. And like he's going to live life to the max. And so we named him Max. And it turns out that, there's a ton of autistic kids out there in the world named Max. And it's kind of ironic to me now. But so that's when things, when he didn't make the normal milestones, we began to take a closer look. And we got him early intervention right away because of our kind of parental intuition. We decided that, like, hey, let's go the extra mile and get him the help that he needs. And so I think at about 6 months he was doing early intervention. Wow. And we got in the Birth to 3 program through our school district. And so we had a one-on-one, like a tutor come to our house and help him out even like at a year old. And so at about a year and a half, we started looking at an autism diagnosis. And back then, autism wasn't quite as prevalent as it is now. And the diagnoses the criteria were a little bit different. And at first they said, no, he's
about 1 year apart, our sons. So I feel like it's the same thing.
Okay.
It was like 1 in 88 at the time, right? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and our doctor at the time said, there's too much eye contact and too much touchy-feely. Like Max is very huggy. He loves to squeeze us all the time. And he provides a lot of great eye contact. And this was before he was talking. And so they could only go by body language. And they said, we don't think it's autism because he's excels in these areas. And so we went back to the drawing board, and we were doing chromosome testing. We were doing hearing testing. We were doing all these different things. And then we sort of just gave up because it was like, well, all these things don't really have a meaning. It was like pervasive development disorder, not otherwise specified. You're like, what does that even mean?
Thing, yeah.
And so we kind of just gave up. And then about 3 years old, his behavior really went in the tank. Like it got really bad. And then he began to exhibit a lot of those characteristics on that kind of diagnosis criteria sheet that you can look at. And so went back to the children's hospital, and at 3 years, he was 3 years old, he was diagnosed with autism. And so that's our journey from birth to about three and a half, I think, is when he got diagnosed. But we just felt like at the end of the day, like right from the day he was born, we knew that something was different. And as things progressed, it kind of solidified that in our minds. Like, yeah, he's doing a lot of the telltale signs. He's lining up his cars on the carpet, perfect lines. He's rubbing his feet back and forth together for an hour at a time, that sort of thing. And so, so you kind of, a lot of the stimming and stuff that, started out really young, and now we know exactly what it was. And so it was kind of, we knew, I think, from the very beginning.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. And then the early intervention, he continued with it, like, until he got the diagnosis. Did they change the services once he got the actual autism diagnosis?
So he stayed in the Birth to 3 program until he was 3, and then at 3 in our public school system, you can enter the developmental preschool. And so he did 3 years at the developmental preschool before he was ready for kindergarten. And at that point, he moved out of the developmental side of education and went mainstream. And he's been mainstreamed since kindergarten. And all through elementary school, he was pulled out of class periodically and during different curriculum and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Or if he was not having a good day, had an episode or something and just needed an escape hatch, our resource room was there for him. And so his resource teacher through elementary school was an incredible person in his life, and was there when it was like the scheduled times that he needed to be pulled out for occupational therapy or speech therapy. Mm-hmm. But also she was there for him as a safety net when his day unraveled on him, and he could jam to her class and have a safe place.
That's so amazing. I love that you guys had that kind of support. So when you guys got the diagnosis, how was the support from your family? I don't know, like, do you guys have a lot of family over there in Washington, or is it just you and your wife and the kids?
In our town, we have Jamie's parents and Jamie's sister and her family, and they've been huge assets for us. My family lives a couple hours away, my mom and dad, and then my siblings are a bit scattered out. And so, but my folks they were present a lot, and they helped out a lot in those early years. And so 2 hours away isn't terrible. They could, we could get there, or they could get here pretty quickly. But yeah, we have that, and we have a pretty big support network with our friends. And we, just like every other family like ours, our friendship dynamics changed a little bit. Some people couldn't handle it, and for whatever reason decided that they would keep their distance. And I think all of us families go through that to a certain degree with our friends. And then the ones that stuck close, they literally told us, like, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Sorry. They told us, like, hey, we will not let you guys fail, and we'll stick by you. And, gosh, just thinking back on that, how critical that was for our family to have a friend group that sees what's going on and acknowledges that, whoa, I don't think I could do this alone. That means they can't do this alone. So let's step in and help. And so we have had a pretty enormous support network from not just our family, but our core group of friends too.
I love that. And I want to chime in and say that, people that step up like that, it means so much. People think that, it's just kind of like, oh, they're getting, early intervention. They got it. Because we, as autism families, we tend not to show our hand, right? Like a lot of the time we, have this facade of like having it all together all the time and not trying to ask for help because sometimes we feel like we can't, so, a lot of people don't know, but the people that do know and like really stick with us and stick by our side and offer to help, even if like we never ask, but like that we know that if any push came to shove, we can count on that person to take your kid or go with you or run an errand for you. That is so big and it's so important. And like you getting choked up like really resonated with me because I feel like not so much my friend group is amazing, right? But there was like some family members that really, when we got the diagnosis, kind of decided to step away in a way. And, we started seeing us being invited less to certain places. Or if we were to come, like kind of like, the side eye or like snide remarks. And it's so hurtful because the thing is like, all we want is support. We don't need anything from you. It's just understanding that our kids are going to function in a different way. And that doesn't mean that they're less or that they're bad or, anything like that. Just really understanding and being kind and lending, that loving heart. We were placed on this planet to love each other. It wasn't just to do whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when we have that village that provides us the love and holds us and, gives us the space to be, it's so intrinsic and it's so special. So I'm so glad that your core group of friends has been able to be there for you guys because that's so important.
Yeah, one of the things that I think all of us parents deal with is there's a giant set of parameters that go along with our kids, right? I call it the rule book, and we establish these rules throughout our child's growth and development, like, hey, you can't have this type of food, or you really need to be in bed by this time, or there's all these rules. And for me, it was, we had to be very careful on who cared for our child given the time of day or given if it was an overnight thing, because if any of the rules in the rule book got broken, like the wheels just come off of everything, right? And so it's finding those people who not only come to your aid and say, hey, we want to help. How can we help? We understand that, we don't know what it's like to be in your shoes, but we want to do something. So allow us to help. And those people that really genuinely want to help will also adopt that same rule book for when they're caring for your child. And that's so critical. Like, you got to know what that rule book is. And it's our job as parents to say, hey, here are the certain hard and fast rules that we have to live by, or the thing's going to fall apart. And so one of the things that our friend group did is they paid attention and they listened and they watched, and they're like, okay, so when I talk to Max, I use this tone, or I use this volume, or I don't get too excited. Like, we've had football games in our house where if somebody jumps up and screams at a play, Max like gets so startled that he doesn't want to see that person ever again, right? Okay. And so we gotta, people have learned over the years how to sort of commingle with Max in a way that they understand the rule book and they know what they can and can't do. And if everybody acknowledges it and lives by it, then we have success. And those are the people that we want to try to find. Those people that understand that, hey, there's a rule book here, and I can't break any of these rules, or I void my trust not only with the kid but with the parents. So
yeah, it's so important. I'm so fortunate that I have like people in my village that I remember he first got diagnosed, and I was like telling them, what I've been learning, because at the same time I changed careers from being in business to being a teacher, special education teacher. So,
okay.
As I was learning, I was teaching other people, but then like those special people in my life, and I want to, give them a shout out, my compadre, which is Aiden's godfather. He would like look up articles, and his godmother too, looking up articles and like, oh, look at this. This is, interventions that you can do, and this is like other research that I found, and did you try this diet, and like just like really showing that they cared and that they wanted
right.
his best, like him to be at his best, and like looking for solutions for me in a way to help him thrive more, which is like there's people that just like do the bare minimum, but like stuff like that was like so like touching to me, because it's like you really really do care, and it shows, and you're showing me that through your action. So I know that being the dad to your daughter was one way, and then being the dad to Max is another. So how has that experience changed you as a father in general? Like what has Max taught you?
Oh man. Well, Max has taught me how to see the world through different lenses, for sure. That's probably the biggest one. And he, by virtue of what I mentioned earlier about, hey, we don't know what it's like to walk in each other's shoes. It's just having him in my life has created an environment where I begin to see people differently, and now all of a sudden there's more grace. If I don't agree with somebody's methodology or how they conduct their life, I now recognize that there's got to be grace, because I don't know what it's like to walk in their shoes, and I can't see life through their lenses, and so don't be judgmental. And so he's just having him in my life has taught me those kinds of things. And being a dad to a daughter and having her she's an incredible human being. She's super smart. She's beautiful. She's very outgoing and has tons of friends, has a boyfriend, and is driving and like the whole thing. And so my parenting is so radically different for her than it is for Max. And I mean, I run a business with her. She's 17. She just turned 17 the other day, and we've started two businesses together. And as she's grown up, she's kind of realized, well, okay, I'm not super interested in this anymore. Let's shift gears. And so we started doing something else. And so there's a ton of pressure put on her where Max doesn't have pressure. And we talk about it, and we're totally open and transparent in our home. Like, hey, I'm a different dad to you than I am to Max. And I expect more out of you than I expect out of Max. And you want to know why? Is because I know that you're capable of so much more than you even know. And so you turn that around as sort of a encouragement and a fire lit under her. And so her relationship with me and our relationship is so much different. I look at her as, she's moving out of that sort of parental daughter type relationship and into kind of like she's getting older and she's got a boyfriend. Now all of a sudden I'm like kind of the friend, and I'm talking to her about guys, and I'm talking to her about business, and I'm talking to her like, and I'm allowing her to make a ton of her own choices now, and where I'd never let Max make these choices, even at, even in 2 years, I can't even imagine when he's his age or her age now, I still can't imagine letting him make these decisions because of her maturity and because of the leadership skills that she possesses and all these different things. And so it's a wild ride being a dad in my home, because my two kids are so radically different that I have to be two different dads. And it's fun because it's such a challenge. And I'm a melancholy personality type, so I like to feel things really deeply. And so when something's going wrong in our home, it's heavy for me. It's really heavy. And so I've found out many, many years ago that if I don't take good care of myself, I'm susceptible to depression. And so I have to do a lot of like mental health exercises and physical fitness and spiritual stuff, like all these things. I'm working on my wellness all the time because I really want to be the best dad I can be. And with Max, like it takes everything for me to be that man, because there's so many times where I just get frustrated, or I'm a human, and I make mistakes and I come down on myself and I get frustrated with myself. And so it's a wild ride. And so being me to my kids, like I put on totally different hats when I'm with my daughter than when I'm with Max. And that's okay. And it's fun. And I get to do funny things that are in their own right with Max, and I get to do some funny stuff. And their two senses of humor are radically different, but they're both hilarious, And so, but it's wild. And I always say that I'm literally a dad in two different families because of how radically different my kids are. So, yeah. Well, let me preface this by saying that my journey, my path, isn't everybody's cup of tea, and because you're going to hear some things that are a little bit crazy, and so I'll just preface it with that. But I've noticed that in my life, I have to put difficult things in my path. If life's going well, and I'm not being physically challenged or mentally challenged or even spiritually challenged, I begin to become complacent, and complacency always ends up leading to mental instability in my life. And so I do some pretty radical forms of mental health exercises. I take ice baths. I take a cold shower every single day. I go in our sauna. We have a sauna in our house. And so I am continually subjecting myself to painful things because I want to always be tough. And I always want to stand in the face of adversity and be able to know what to do calmly and make the right decision in the moment. And so I put really hard things in my way, as a methodology to sort of train myself to take the adversity or the challenges or whatever you want to call it of being a parent of an autistic son. I want to always be in shape to handle those things, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual. I want to be able to be in shape enough to handle those things. And so one of the things that helps me the most with mental health is physical fitness. It actually begins to rewire your brain, right? The hippocampus in your brain, different neurons start firing when you do physical exercise, and it helps your brain not think about your current situation in the same light. It's to put some more positive spin on it. And so you begin to be able to kick depression by doing physical exercise. And so I do a lot of physical exercise. The room behind me is a gym, and it's in use every single day. And so I have to, I feel like, some people look at me crazy, or they're like, dude, you got to screw loose, because of how serious I take it. And maybe that's the case. Maybe I've got some stuff that could be diagnosed. I don't know. But here's the deal. If I stay on top of that stuff, and I take that stuff seriously, my life goes so much better. Yeah. And so I choose to do difficult things, and I choose to do them as a training tool to be stronger mentally and spiritually. Physically, I don't have to be strong physically. Max, he doesn't get violent. I mean, he has in the past, but I don't feel like I mean, there are some parents out there where their kid's twice the size of them, and the child acts out in violence, and I don't know how those parents handle that. Yeah. And luckily I don't have to do that. So my physical fitness is really just a mental health thing. And so that's where I struggle, is being bogged down in the mental weight of all of the issues that we have as parents of special needs kids, like what's going to happen in the future, and what's going to happen tomorrow, and how am I going to handle this one thing or that thing. And so that's really why I do that. And I, just like you, recognize that when you get that diagnosis, or when you understand that your child's going to be different and you're going to take a different path, you dive headlong into figuring out what that's going to be for your child. You find them help, and you go to the ends of the earth to figure that out for them. And every parent I know, including myself, forgets to take care of themselves along the way. And then all of a sudden, all those things that you worry about, like who's going to be there for my kid, well, you got to worry about yourself if you want to go the distance with your kid. And so my biggest encouragement, and why I have that Instagram account, is simply to encourage moms and dads to, hey, well, I know it's hard. Take a step back, focus on yourself. We're going to make some lifestyle adjustments. I'm going to have some encouraging words. We're going to do some exercises together that do different things where, hey, you've got a mountain of stuff you got to tackle every single day. And so let's talk about our lifestyles and taking good care of ourselves in little small bite-sized chunks. Like we don't have to go out and do or do some huge fitness program, or go to some mental health retreat, or any of that stuff. What we can do as parents who are busy from sun up to sundown is focus on little bite-sized things. Like here's an adjustment I'm going to do, and it's Monday, and I might not make another adjustment until next Monday, but I'm gonna slowly chip away at some things in my life that I can do to be healthier, better version of myself, so that I can be a better parent for my kid. Like I say it all the time, I'm not trying to win a beauty contest. I just want to be a good dad. And so and that's why I do it. That's why this room is here in the house, and that's why I do a lot of the cold baths and the cold showers and stuff. I just want to be focused and in shape and the best I can be, because my kids deserve it.
Yeah, I want to touch on two things. So that's one of the main reasons that I was going, like, when I when I separated from my son's father, I was going through like a lot of depression, and my way to deal with it was eating, right? So I ended up being like extremely overweight. I lost the weight, but it wasn't so much that I wanted to look prettier. It was more like I want to be able to keep up after this kid, because Aiden was like one of those elopers. So I used to have to like, bolt after him. So, the physical fitness came in there, but then the mental health piece was, I found myself, I tend to be depressive, kind of like you, but I found myself in a point that I was just down there and I couldn't get myself out. So that's when I started looking for help for therapy and things like that, and then looking for community. So, all of that is so important, because the thing is, like, we worry so much, like what you said, we worry so much about what's going to happen to our kids, but we need to make sure that we're there to be able to take care of that kid. Those kids are our priority. You know what I'm saying? So us taking care of our mental health is like taking care of them as well. So those ice baths, I wanted to say, I practice Kundalini yoga, and we don't do like a full submersion in the ice bath, but like 5 minutes or whatever, like at the end of the shower, you turn off the hot water and let the cool water run down. It works so well, because like after you're done with the meditation and the yogic practice, you're taking like a shower, that you're being conscious about what you're doing, but then like the cold water helps you like activate things in your body. It just is so good, and it's so beneficial.
Yeah, and people think I'm crazy for doing it, but I usually get like 2 colds a year. Like when the season changes, I'll get a cold, and I started doing a daily cold shower 3 years ago, and aside from a little bout with COVID, I haven't been sick in 3 years, and that's the first time I've ever gone that long in my life without getting a cold. And I think it's just a really good immune booster. Your body's like in fight mode all the time. My cold showers are wire to wire. I get in cold and get out cold, and I think what's going on is when my body's trying to warm up, I think that's when the real work is happening, because for the next half an hour to an hour, I'm kind of still cold, and my body's fighting to warm me back up. And I think that's when your body's in fight mode all the time and just ready to like all hands on deck. We gotta protect this human. I think that's when the work is done, and I'm a huge believer in that, in cold water therapy. And I think that, think about it. If you're not sick and you don't have a cold, then you're a better parent. It's hard to be a great parent when you're sick. And so, even if it's just for that, then hey, great. I can parent well because I don't have a cold. And but the real benefit is that it's so many things. It's like I said earlier, most of it is just that mental grit that you learn from. All of a sudden there's this external stimulus hitting you that's very uncomfortable, and you've got to learn how to cope with it and deal with it and make wise decisions even in the midst of it. And so that's why I love it so much.
So besides the ice baths and the working out, is there anything else that you do to pour into yourself?
Spiritual component, as I'm a Christian, and my relationship with Jesus Christ is the only way I think I could be who I am and parent well. And so I believe that if you're working on your holistic wellness, whether it's your body, mind, or your spirit, you need to be working on all 3, because they work in concert with one another. And if you're failing in any one of them, the others start to suffer too. And so along with the physical fitness that I do and the mental fitness that I do, I also work hard on my spirituality. So I'm reading my Bible every morning, and I'm involved with my church. I'm on a couple different committees. In fact, I have a board meeting here in a few hours, but and then surround myself with like-minded people who are also in that same boat. And so we can, iron sharpens iron, sort of that spiritual component comes through a community of other people that believe the same way that I do. And so, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I was always an active person, and I was always, an athlete and that sort of thing, but I never considered what wellness, mental health and spiritual wellness, accompanying physical health meant until I was a parent of a special needs kid, until I was actually forced to recognize it. It was 2012, I think, when I went through a really severe bout of depression, and I swore up and down when I crawled out of that hole that I would never go back there. And so a lot of what I'm doing has that, like I have that in the back of my mind. Yes, I want to do this for my kids. I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good husband. I want to be the best human I can be in God's eyes. And but in the back of my mind, there's always this, hey, if you let off the gas, you might succumb to depression again, and you don't ever want to go back there, Chad. So get in shape. So that's kind of that's why I really push so hard on the wellness stuff, and I can't be alone. I mean, you said it yourself. You're talking about it in your life, and I'm imagining that everybody watching this right now acknowledges something in their life that you could be a little better in when it comes to your wellness.
Yes.
And so we're all a work in progress. We're still working on a lot of stuff in our home, but it's so crucial if we want to be the best parents that we can be and provide the best for our kids. It's got to be a main focus in our personal lives.
Yes, I agree. So, are there any little things that you do for self-care? Like, I know you guys go for walks with your son, which I love. Is there anything else that you guys do for self-care?
No, I mean, we pretty much we pretty much touched on all of it. I did a program a year ago called 75 Hard, and it's a program. Some people call it a fitness program.
Okay.
People call it a weight loss program. It's not any of those things. It's a self-discipline program, and it makes you work out twice a day and stick to a diet and take a progress picture and drink a gallon of water. There's all these things that you got to do, and you got to do them for 75 straight days. And when I did that program a year ago, a lot of things stuck. And so because a lot of those have to do with wellness, I still do a lot of them. And so we're doing a morning walk. Jamie and I do a morning walk every day. And we're fortunate enough where our kids are old enough to where we can leave them home and they're safe, right? Not all parents get that luxury. And but now that we're far enough along in our journey, we get to do that. And so we do that. And I am a huge believer in taking the time out to let the dust settle and hang out with your partner. And so Jamie and I make sure that we do a lot of stuff where it's just her and I, where we try to do. I mean, it's funny because we're probably together more throughout our day than any other married couple. We walk together in the morning. We work together. We're business partners, and then we work out in the evening together, and then we do family stuff, and so we're together all the time. But that's another form of the self-care that I suggest everybody do is if you are in a relationship with someone who you're parenting with, make sure you're taking the time to be alone with them and have some quiet time with them and work on, talk about the struggles, talk about things that are going well, and really focus on your guys' relationship. So not all of the focus is being put on your parenting journey. And so that's another thing that I do and that Jamie and I do together for self-care is just make sure that we put the time in on our own relationship. And we actually see a marriage counselor. Our marriage is not in jeopardy and we're doing fine, but we see a marriage counselor just as sort of a maintenance thing.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And our counselor has asked us a number of times, hey, do you want to be done? And we're like, no way, man. This is great and I always say, just because your car's running great doesn't mean you stop changing the oil.
True.
So it's a maintenance thing for us. Yeah. So
that's amazing. Thank you so much.
But I'm a huge believer in lots of different modalities and lots of different ways, and that's where my encouragement comes in to other parents is, be paying attention to all of these things. And the reason I do it is because I learned the hard way. And I got to a point where I did not want to be in my life, emotionally and physically, and I don't want other moms and dads to get to that point. I want to catch that before anything bad happens and encourage them to take better care of themselves. So that's it in a nutshell.
I love it. Thank you so much, Chad. This was such a good conversation. So I'm going to end the show.
Oh, you're welcome, Marcy.
Yeah. So I'm going to end the show how I usually end it, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod on Instagram. And you can follow Chad at Soul Ambition 1 on Instagram. And if you have any questions at all for me or Chad, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram via email at marcy@comadreandopod.com or slide up into my DMs. Comadres, don't forget to log in to www.comadreandopod.com for your Comadreando merchandise. And I want to thank you for spending time with your comadre and your compadre. Chad, you're now a compadre of the show.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you, Chad. Bye.
Have a good one.
Hello. Hello, comadre.
Hey, comadre.
Do you have a minute for comadre time?